Okay, so the fact I even had to make this video is crazy, but I've been seeing a lot of stuff flying around online, a lot of reviews going live, a lot of discussion all around Drake and this new album, but I'm not seeing a lot of honest discussion. I'm not seeing a lot of unbiased discussion, and I feel like I'm seeing a lot of agendas being pushed. Generally, it's specifically one way, but we're basically just gonna go through all my different thoughts on what's going on right now. Now, you don't have to like Drake, you don't have to like this album, you don't have to like a single thing he's done. But I think if you're going to actually evaluate music, you should do it fairly and not hold them to weird standards or evaluate in some weird way based on some weird parasocial kind of stuff. So I just got done watching the Fantano review where he gave Drake's new album ICEMAN a light 2. So my problem with this, right? I watched the whole interview, 26 minutes, okay? Just finished. He spends half the time talking about things that are just not relevant at all, and he doesn't even shit on the album enough to where at the end you think he's gonna give it a light 2. Frankly, I just wrote out a bunch of points while watching the video that just made me mad because I didn't think he was fairly evaluating the album, and I feel like that's quite literally his job. So if he's not going to do that, then he shouldn't be evaluating black art. It's just that simple. So here's going to be a bunch of stuff that kind of struck me, right? This is just a random point, but he called Honestly Nevermind, his dance album, a lazy project. That was crazy to me because he did not have to drop that project at all. He didn't have to make it at all. Nobody was forcing him. Nobody was demanding that he dropped a dance album. He dropped a dance album for fun. There was a bunch of bangers on it. I don't really know what else you need. And to sit there and call the project lazy, I mean, that just feels like you're taking some weird personal stuff and injecting it into the situation when I don't think it has anything to do with that. I don't see how you can call it a lazy project when it was cohesive. It had direction, it had a cool cover art, and personally, I like the name. It's nothing crazy. It's just a simple little project. And that's what it was for. I don't know how that can be considered lazy. I feel like that's just not fair criticism at all. He also said that Iceman had a big lack of inspiration on the album. I don't see that at all. I mean, I think that Iceman is the most inspired Drake has been this decade. I kind of find it weird because he spends the whole time talking about how Drake is stuck in his head, or Drake has still thinking about this or still bringing this up or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, is he not inspired, or is he inspired by all the things that you're listing out? Because those are completely different things. And from my point of view, you're claiming he's not inspired, but then laying out a bunch of reasons why he actually is inspired that you're actually taking from the project. So he is inspired. It's just he's inspired by something that you are biased with. Because throughout this review, he's clearly biased towards Kendrick, which is fine. I like Kendrick. Who doesn't like Kendrick? But you can't just review an album through the lens of a Kendrick. Like, that's not how we do this. You need to evaluate this as a Drake fan or as a neutral fan. You can't just come in here and be like, oh, well, if I'm a Kendrick fan and I dislike Drake, how am I going to feel about it? That is not fair. He spent a bunch of time talking about how people are trying to push the agenda that hip-hop is worse without Drake, but he's actually still been around. Like, who the fuck cares about that? Like, you're just pushing weird narratives, and it's like, who cares? I don't care about that. He hasn't dropped a single solo project in 3 years. As someone who has been a Drake fan since like 2007, I don't care about random singles. I don't care about him doing a Hey Delilah cover like you said. I care about his single projects where he's actually trying. So I don't really see why you're even bringing up the narrative of hip hop being worse without Drake that people are saying. Like, that's just frankly irrelevant because he hasn't dropped a solo project in 3 years. So you can say, oh, I mean, he even brought up the Party Next Door collab project. It's like, bro, that's an R&B album. Yeah, you can say Drake has been around, but obviously he hasn't been dropping projects the way he normally is, and he hasn't been actually trying the way you can say he tried because he released like What Did He Miss and stuff, but That's not really trying, in my opinion. He's just releasing music. He's allowed to he's allowed to release music. He's an artist. He's a rapper. So the thing that stood out to me the absolute most was this quote that he said. He said, "The only way I can imagine anyone enjoying this entire album is if you are carrying an insecurity or trauma as a drink." The fact that we're letting this dude review music is just a joke. That quote speaks for itself. The fact that you have to be implied to have some weird insecurity or trauma just to enjoy an album by Drake is some of the most biased, like, weird framing I've ever heard in my life. The fact that he's even comfortable putting this stuff out is pretty depressing. It really just speaks to the mental capacity of the people that are listening to what he's actually saying, because if you were actually listening, you would interpret what he's saying and be like, wow, this dude has no idea what the fuck he's talking about, so I'm not gonna listen to it. I also thought it was weird because he clearly doesn't like Drake, but then he literally has the authority apparently to tell me whether Drake still has it or not. Like, he's like, oh, Drake doesn't have it anymore. It's like, how do you know that if you don't even fairly evaluate his music? That doesn't make sense to me. Let's take it past Fantano, right? Fantano is just a big example pretty much of the problem because he has a large platform and sadly influences people, but we can take it further than that, right? So I've been reading a bunch of comments in every single social media that you can think of, whether it be Twitter, Reddit, wherever. I've just been reading comments about the album because I like music, I like discussing music, I like seeing what people are saying. The thing that really stood out to me, obviously, this happens every time, right? But it was even more than normal just because of the whole Kendrick Drake versus Drake thing, right? So as soon as the album drops, you start to see discussion coming in, right? Well, you'll see within the first half an hour to an hour, people saying, oh, it's mid. Oh, all three projects are mid. Oh, I can't believe Drake came back with all this stuff. It's like, whoa. The album's just dropped. You cannot evaluate a single album in 30 minutes, let alone 3. So all of the dishonest discussion that was actually going on was genuinely hurting my brain because I feel like we've just lost the plot as a society, as music enjoyers, on how to actually evaluate and discuss this music that we're listening to. There is nothing wrong with disliking Drake. There's nothing wrong with disliking all 3 of the albums he released. You could say they're the worst things you've ever heard. But I need you to bring fair criticism of critique as well of why, right? You can't just say weird things like, the only way you enjoy this album is if you're insecure. It's like, okay, we know where you're coming from at that point, right? You don't actually care about the music, you care about pushing your weird agenda, and I'm not really with that. The thing that's so weird to me too is you don't have to take sides. Like, there is no sides. We're fucking fans listening to music. I'm not Drake, you're not Kendrick. None of this fucking matters. What matters is just enjoying music. So I don't know why people take on this weird us versus them mentality and all this stuff. It's like, no, bro, just enjoy the music and evaluate the music. And I wish it was just these comment sections and like Fantano. Oh, like I could just like, you know, brush it off, be like, okay, well, some people can't have honest discussion, that's fine, but obviously other people are going to, right? But then you start looking at any of the reviews that have come out and it's just not looking good. There was a bunch of reviews that came out in the first 24 hours where they reviewed all 3 albums. That's just not possible. I don't understand why we're giving any like stock or credit to these people or reviewers when they're not even being honest reviewers. It's really sad where we're at, I would say. I think something needs to change. It probably won't because I think we're just going downhill. But yeah, this can't just keep happening. I feel bad for Drake in the sense that he just needs to be fairly evaluated. It's kind of like how they say, nobody loves you until you're gone. I mean, everyone talks all this shit about Drake, but as soon as he's gone, We know people are going to be crying that rap's dead or nothing is exciting anymore and all this stuff. So I don't know why people have to be so weird about it. Overall, I think Drake and Kendrick are both great artists, and they always have been. In my opinion, both of them fell off towards the tail end of the 2010s. I don't think either of them have dropped good music in the last decade until now. I personally do enjoy these Drake albums. I think they're pretty good. I'm not going to sit here and say all this weird biased and targeted and agenda filled stuff, because that's not how I am, and that's not how you should be either. We should be discussing the art as it should be discussed. And if we're going to discuss, I think the side album, the R&B album, Habibti, I think that's the best music he's dropped in probably over a decade. I think the second half of that album, probably from like, oh God, the song with Low Shimmy and then Classic all the way to the end, that stuff is like the best material he's put out probably since before Views, I would say, because I re-listened to all of his projects prior to 2017 in the last like 6 months. So I can comfortably say, I didn't like Views on re-listen, by the way, just saying. So I can comfortably say that this music is the best music he's dropped since like before Views. And that's genuinely how I feel. But that's because I can tell he's having fun. I can tell he feels inspired. I can tell he's not taking it super, super seriously on every single song. But I can also tell he's not just shitting out stuff as well. I appreciate that. So I'm going to fairly evaluate the projects because he's fairly giving me some stuff that he's actually trying on, right? So it's my job as the listener to be fair to him and actually give him my ear, give it a chance, and digest the music, which is what I'm doing. And when I did that, I realized that ICEMAN isn't the best album of all time. Habibti isn't the best album of all time. Maid of Honor isn't the best album of all time. But they're damn solid, and that's really all I asked for from Drake in 2026. I don't really know how you could be asking for more. I know people hyped up the last two Kendrick projects. Personally, I thought they were pretty mid. I didn't like any of the Drake projects this decade before this, really, besides Honestly Nevermind and like a few songs off the 21 Savage collab. But otherwise, I haven't been listening to Drake. I mean, I listen to underground rappers, so I'm not out here listening to Drake all the time. But when he drops, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to give it a fair evaluation, unlike many other people. So yeah, let me know what you think. You might think the same, you might feel different. Let me know down below, and I'll be dropping more soon. Peace.